This is Rick Levine here with your monthly forecast for December of 2019. As you can see, I am here from Ubud, Bali, where I've been for a few weeks and will be yet for another couple of months. This month, December, should be quite a finale to the year, and as strong an ending to the year as we're going to see in December, with the major shift of course, Jupiter moving from its yearly visit to Sagittarius into Capricorn. Aside from that, we're moving into eclipse season, and perhaps the most important thing is as this year comes to a finale, we're really just opening up 2020, which will go down in history as the year amongst years, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, so let's get down to it. Just a quick word about where I am. It's going to be getting dark outside behind me. The room will get dim. This is a interesting country when it comes to lighting and electricity. It's a miracle that we're able to record this, and so away we go. Looking at December, I should say one quick word before we jump into it. And that is that for those of you in the Seattle area who may be considering to come to Soul Food Coffee House for the end of the year, for the late December, the last Wednesday in December, and the January presentation, that will not be happening at Soul Food. It will still be played via YouTube, via video at Soul Food Coffee House in Redmond, Washington. But for anyone who happens to be in Bali, in and around Ubud, the middle of the month, I will be doing a live presentation at Karma House, that's just outside of Ubud in Penastanan. If you're in Bali toward the middle of December, we haven't set the date, but it'll probably be right around the 15th or so. Send me an email or do a search on Karma House in Ubud. And I will see you there. So let's get into it, because this is a really intriguing month. There's a lot of shifts going on. And as I said in the little prologue that I recorded outside on the veranda, the interesting thing about December is that it really is a culminating month and a shift into something new. And that shift into something new is really setting the tone for what will be an entire year. The fact of the matter is that Jupiter is a 12-year cycle, roughly. It spends 1 year in each sign. Jupiter moved into Sagittarius last December, and it spent a year there. And on December 2nd, it moves from Sagittarius, its home sign, where it was rather powerful and strong. And even in light of all of the heavy things going on in the world, Jupiter in Sagittarius was hopeful. It gave us this idea of the possibility and the potential of the good that can happen. And when Jupiter moves into Capricorn on December 2nd, where it will remain for the rest of the year, it will remain for not only the rest of 2019, but all through 2020 until December of 2020. And at that point in time, Jupiter will be moving right along with Saturn in Capricorn, and they will both click into Aquarius. And this will set the stage for everything that comes beyond, even though 2019 and 2020 are culmination years. It really is 2021 that begins the step into the new, although it's going to feel new all through 2020. It's going to feel real, the metamorphosis, the change, and we'll get into that more later today and next month when we talk about the exact Saturn-Pluto conjunction on January 12th of 2020, which we're in the throes of right now. I mean, Saturn and Pluto are already within a couple of degrees of each other, and they're going to be inching closer and closer and closer together. And this is certainly a theme of what's going on all over the planet as Saturn boundaries Pluto transformation, as these two astrological giants. Even though Pluto is small, it's a good indication of power can be packed in very tiny places. But as these two planets come together, we will see more and more about boundaries bumping up against each other, and the polarization, which seems already stretched to the max, I think will even become more so until something gives or many things give, but we will get to there also. The key right now, though, is that on December 2nd, Jupiter, the planet of expansion, moves into Capricorn, which is Saturn, the planet of contraction's home sign. Saturn has been in Capricorn now for a couple of years, and Saturn is moving toward the end of Capricorn. Well, it's now actually in the late 19, so by the end of the year, Saturn will be pushing 21 degrees of Capricorn. But right now, Saturn is moving toward Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn has been in its home sign since it moved into Capricorn December 2 years ago. What this means is Jupiter is now moving into Saturn's domain. Classical astrology says that Jupiter is not happy when it moves into Capricorn. It was happy in Sagittarius, and it will be happy in Sagittarius until December 2nd, when it feels the weight of Saturn bearing on it. Jupiter isn't quite as optimistic and isn't quite as expansive, and it doesn't breathe quite as deeply, and it doesn't exhale quite as much. It's restrained by the laws, by the rules, by the tradition. And this will be a theme that we will see as it plays out throughout the year. The other important things about the month of December, we'll get to looking at charts in just a moment, is several planets change signs. Mercury moves into Sagittarius. It's been in Scorpio forever. And Mercury moves into Sagittarius on December 9th. We have a full moon on December 11th, and that's a Gemini full moon, and we'll dig down on that a bit. Also, Venus, which is now moving through Capricorn, catches up with Saturn on the day of the full moon, and that gives it a bit of heaviness, a bit of weight. Venus is moving from across Saturn, and then it will also line up with Pluto on December 13th, and this will give us a little bit of foreshadowing of the Saturn-Pluto coming up in January. By December 15th, or getting toward the middle of the month, some of this may feel like the holiday season, but we begin to get a bit of expansion again, even though Jupiter is in Sirius Capricorn. Capricorn's an earth sign. Remember, Uranus is now in early degrees of Taurus, an earth sign. So on December 15th, we get Jupiter forming a trine with Uranus. And Jupiter and Uranus like working together. They like it a lot because Jupiter's expansive, Jupiter's optimistic. Jupiter is basically the rewards we get from having done the work, if we've done the work. Uranus is the sudden change. It's the awakening. It's the lights going on. And so when Jupiter and Uranus connect by a harmonious aspect, it's often a major breakthrough. And we can look at December 15th, give or take a few days, because remember, these are slow-moving planets. And even though it's a one-time sweep, often when we get an aspect from Jupiter, often we get it again on the retrograde and then on the direct. But right now, Jupiter is moving very fast. Jupiter, moves into Capricorn on December 2nd. and it makes it all the way up to about, I don't know, 27 degrees or something like that, of Capricorn before it turns retrograde, and then it retrogrades back to mid Capricorn, and then it turns direct, and then it moves on into Aquarius the end of 2020. So this Jupiter trine Uranus is an important piece of the puzzle for the month, and that full moon where we have the heaviness of Venus conjunct Saturn, and we also have on the full moon day we have Mars forming a trine with Neptune, and so that again is opening. That is fantasy and the potential and the possibilities of what can happen. So I think in the middle of the month we get a little bit of a reprieve, and then the energy closes down a bit. On December 19th, Venus moves into Aquarius. It's now pushing into new territory. On December 21st, that's the summer, I'm sorry, the summer solstice where I am here in the Southern Hemisphere, but that's the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. The sun moves into Capricorn at 8:19 p.m., and that's Eastern time. And that is the beginning of the season of winter. We have on that same day, the following day, Venus squares Uranus, a bit of electrical change, some excitement for sure. Again, this may feel wrapped up in the holidays. And then on December 24th, on Christmas Day Eve, no, it's on Christmas. Yeah, it's on Christmas Day Eve. We have the sun forming that same trine with Uranus that Jupiter formed on the 15th. And so here again is this optimistic, this expansive nature. And as the sun moves into Capricorn, on the solstice, on the 21st, it's going to actually begin picking up that trine to Uranus, because it doesn't, Uranus is at 2 degrees, 2.5, almost 3 degrees of Taurus. And as soon as the sun on the solstice moves into Capricorn, it's going to be buzzing and humming with that electric kind of exciting energy. And it may very much be wrapped up with the holidays, but there's other stuff going on too. And this leads to the new moon on December 25th. This is 9:13 p.m. Eastern time. Actually, where I am, it will be, because of the international date line, it will be just after noon on Boxing Day on the 26th. But this new moon in Capricorn at 4 degrees of Capricorn is a total eclipse. It's actually an annular eclipse, which is a special kind of total eclipse. It's because the moon is a little bit farther away from the Earth than it normally is. The moon doesn't quite cover the entire sun, which means that at quote unquote totality, the sun is a ring, an annulus. It's you can actually see the ring of the entire sun as the moon goes across it. I am planning on being in Singapore, where that is visible. So for those of you who are in the Singapore area, it's not visible here in this part of Indonesia. You got to go a little bit further to the north to get to be on the eclipse line. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But that's on December 25th in the United States, 9:13 p.m. Eastern time. Obviously in Europe, it'll be early on the 26th. But then on the 27th, the sun actually catches up with Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's moving pretty quickly right now, or by then, and Jupiter will already be almost at 6 degrees of Capricorn, having moved almost 6 degrees just through the month of December. And the sun actually 5-6 days after the solstice will catch up with Jupiter. And again, that 27th, optimism, hope, potential. Some of this now may be aimed at the new year. On the 28th, Mercury, having whizzed through Sagittarius. Remember, Mercury moved into Sagittarius on December 9th, and on the 28th, it moves into Capricorn. And again, the planets are building up in Capricorn by the end of the year. We have a virtual pileup of planets in Capricorn, and that sets a very serious tone for the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January of 2020. But just like each of the other planets that moved into Capricorn, just like the Sun having moved into Capricorn, and just like Venus, which had moved into Capricorn, when Mercury moves into Capricorn, it too will make, and the same was true of Jupiter moving into Capricorn. But as Mercury moves into Capricorn on December 28th, because Mercury is moving rather fast now, Mercury trines Uranus on December 30th, which means that New Year's Eve will have a real buzz to it, and we will just see how that unfolds. So let's bring up a chart. Okay, so what we have here is a chart for December 1st. That's Sunday, December 1st. This chart is actually a chart for west coast of the United States. But we see on December 1st that Jupiter is at 29 degrees, 48 minutes of Sagittarius. It's just about ready to go into Capricorn. And of course, as I mentioned, on the 2nd, Jupiter does move into Capricorn. We also have here, the month starts obviously with the Sun in Sagittarius. It'll be in Sagittarius all the way up to the solstice on the 21st. We have a moon in Aquarius, and we have Venus, the South Node, Saturn, and Pluto all in ambitious, serious, structured Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign of all structures, governmental structures, banking structures, laws of the land. And we're going to watch these planets kind of cluster in here, get stronger and stronger all the way up through the eclipse on Boxing Day. So as we move this ahead just a day at a time, there's Jupiter having moved into Capricorn. And now we have a veritable weight. It's a stellium. I actually, for many years, thought that a stellium was 3 or more planets in conjunction. The actual technical definition of the word stellium for astrology is 3 or more, or four or more planets in one sign. So this is a Capricorn stellium. It's a cluster of planets in Capricorn, and it's important because it puts the energy of, regardless of where other planets are, that Capricorn energy is kind of creating a steady pace. It's creating a rhythm that almost we can't help but gear into that kind of calculated, compelling. It's almost like gears that grind, that are compelled by other gears to march in tune with. Also on the 2nd, we have a couple of little sextiles that are kind of nice. Mercury sextiles Pluto, Mercury at 21 degrees sextiles Pluto. And that is certainly good for deep communication. We're coming off of a few days ago, Mercury sextiling Saturn. So this is real communication, stuff that is inarguable, is surfacing, and we are having to deal with what's being dredged up. On December 3rd, we have Venus moving ahead of the Sun, forming a sextile with Mars. And this is always reminds me of Paul McCartney's old line, Venus and Mars are all right tonight. This is a balance between the what you like, the what you love, the what you're attracted to, and the how you're going to get it. Mars. Venus is the yin, it's the soft, it's the attractive energy. Mars is the macho, is the yang, it's the kind of assertive or aggressive energy, and they are in a sweet balance here on December 3rd. By December 8th, we have the Sun building into a square with Neptune. There it is right there. They're at 15 degrees here on the 7th, and on the 8th at noon, it's slightly past it. But that actual square happens about midnight, 1 a.m. when the Sun actually on the 8th squares Neptune. And this is a bit of dissolution of reality. Things are not as clear here. a sense of either confusion or breaking down of barriers or breaking down of the walls. We may not have as much of a sense as what's going on. We also have Jupiter having moved into Capricorn, forming a square with Chiron. And Jupiter-Chiron contacts are interesting because they often produce what I call the rainbow chasers. Jupiter is our hopes. Jupiter is our, it's the potential, it's the rewards. And Chiron is often that place in our chart where we get to teach others because of our experiences, and our experiences are often based upon things that we learned when things weren't going right. And so Jupiter square Chiron is can be the person who always thinks, in this day we might say, the solution is right around the corner, it's around the next bend, only to realize, like the pot of gold at the rainbow, it's not there, or the rainbow now ends somewhere else. And so so that's December 7th, December 7th, December 8th. We also have Venus making a sweet sextile with Neptune. This is romantic, it's fantasy oriented, but it's Venus, so it's pleasurable. And then on the 9th, watch Mercury here. Remember, Mercury was in Scorpio forever because it moved into Scorpio for over 2 months. It moved into Scorpio, reached late degrees of Scorpio, turned retrograde, went direct again. And so on December 9th, watch right here, as we go to December 9th, Venus moves from Scorpio into Sagittarius. I'm sorry, Mercury moves from Scorpio into Sagittarius. And it's another signal that we're coming out of the depths, out of the darkness, out of the hidden realms, out of the hell realms where things were not on the surface. And now as Mercury moves into Sagittarius, even though Jupiter's gone, even though Jupiter's on into Capricorn, there's that sense of communication, kind of communicating about the possibilities. We become more philosophical, we become more hopeful, I think, in our thinking process. By the 11th, we have Venus, which here on the 10th, you can see Venus getting closer and closer. Venus moves faster than Saturn. And so Venus, over the next few days, is going to catch up with Saturn and then catch up with even slower moving Pluto, while day by day Saturn catches up slowly to Pluto, although it's going to take another month for Saturn to get those 2 degrees and gain that distance on Pluto. But watch here from December 10th to the 11th, as Venus lines up with Saturn, bumps across it. And when Venus and Saturn line up, it's often a time when Venus love, Venus nice things, Venus money, Saturn bumps into a wall. Saturn restrains it. In some ways, it holds it back. Now, on the difficult thing is we can feel isolated. We can feel like we don't have enough. We can feel like it's not worth trying to get what we want because we never get it. It can kind of feel, we can tune into that negativity of Saturn holding back the sweetness of Venus. On the other hand, the deeper lesson here is that when we forego the immediate gratification, the long-term rewards are often much better. And so here, this is more about loyalty and commitment and building towards something rather than flashing the energy off in a moment. But on December 11th, we also have something else cooking, and that is we have the full moon. Now, I've just added the aspects to the moon, and you can see that the moon is coming into opposition. I kept the aspects of the moon off because they just clutter the chart up. There's just too much and they don't last long. But I'm going to move this forward an hour at a time so we can actually see that moon coming into full and the line between the moon and the sun getting thicker and thicker as that comes into almost being exact, close enough right there. The exact full moon is at 9:12 p.m. And the significant thing here is that the full moon in Gemini to the sun in Sagittarius, this is an informational aspect. This is an aspect having to do with connecting dots. That's the Gemini moon, the curiosity, the trying to put data in, in some sort of connection to other data. But then the sun in Sagittarius wants the overarching picture. It wants the big picture. It wants to see how it all fits into everything. And this full moon is square Neptune, Neptune being the confusing planet. And here's where it gets interesting, because we still have Mars hanging back in Scorpio, and Mars on the day of the full moon is forming a trine with Neptune. And so we might have a lot of data, but we're still not clear about where we're going with it. There's still some fuzziness, there's still some lack of certainty. And remember, this is also the Venus-Saturn conjunction. December, this is an incredibly complicated and powerful full moon. The full moon in Gemini is closely quincunx the Venus-Saturn, actually the Venus-Pluto-Saturn conjunction, because Venus is kind of right there in the middle once it moves across Saturn. And this is about trying to adjust. Remember, quincunxes are irritating and they're adjustments. And it's adjusting what we're learning, what we know, the information we're working with, how it fits into the bigger picture, that's the Sagittarius sun, and how it doesn't work with the structures that we're working within. And this is a bit frustrating. This is a difficult full moon, and yet that Mars trine to Neptune gives us a way, if we can work in the imagination, it gives us a way to work through this. And we're also building day by day now closer and closer to the Jupiter trining to Uranus. I mean, look, it's only a degree apart already. And I said earlier, before we started looking at charts, when Jupiter moves into Capricorn, it's immediately picking up on this trine to Uranus. And that's exact on December 15th. But even at this full moon, where we're seeing the potential of breaking through, breaking out of whatever has been holding us back, even though Jupiter in Capricorn moves a little bit slower, there's a saying that any progress is better than no progress at all. And I think that Jupiter in Capricorn, as it trines Uranus, does a breakthrough, and it gives us some real progress. The other thing that happens here around the full moon, actually the day after, is that Venus actually catches up with and joins. We're still on an hour at a time. Let's go back to the noon chart. There we go. And move it a day at a time again. And there's Venus by the 13th, actually caught up with Pluto. Pluto here at 2149 and Venus at 2203. So this would have happened before lunch on Friday, December 13th, East Coast US. And that Venus lining up with Pluto is simply a way of carrying the energy deeper. It's not unpleasant, but it's not for the light-hearted. It's not for the faint of heart. This is not casual. This is an intense and powerful energy that really drags us down deeper, at the same time that Jupiter is moving closer and closer to the trine to Uranus. And by the 15th, that trine is exact. Here it's 257 Capricorn to 257 Taurus. And this is the heavens open. We can see the horizons that maybe were obscured from view. We can see out to the outer edges of the galaxy. Our vision opens and we know where we're going. We know how to get there. We know what we're doing. Now it'll close back up over the days ahead, but the clarity of what goes on right now and between the full moon and this period of time, it's very important to hold that, to develop practices and maybe even rituals around what it is that's in your mind at this time, because this is an incredibly potent and powerful period of time. Now, we also have during this time Mars moving through Scorpio, and over the next few days, it forms sextiles with Saturn and with Pluto. Mars forms the sextile with Saturn on the 19th. There it is right there. Let me get rid of the moon aspects again. It's just they're distracting because they come and go so quickly. And now we have the moon unaspected. Obviously, it's making aspects. We're just not filling up the page with all the lines from the moon here. But what's important is on the 19th, we do have Mars making a sextile first with Saturn on the 19th. And then by the 22nd, that will be making a sextile with Pluto. Let's just run this ahead 2 more days. And there it is by the 22nd, making a sextile with Pluto. The moon in Scorpio on the 22nd is coming around. That can be a very intense day where a lot of feelings are expressed. It's a Sunday, so that energy may be built up at home, especially as we're going into the holidays. Let's back up again because we don't want to skip this important thing of the sun moving from Sagittarius, the sign of the archer, the hopeful, futuristic, adventurous sign, from here on the 21st. And let's actually get this exactly right time-wise. So the actual moment when the sun moves into Capricorn, it's actually 8:19 p.m. on the 21st. And you can see here that the sun is at 29 degrees 59 minutes. 1 minute later, there's the sun at 8:20 at 0 degrees of Capricorn. This is the winter solstice. The sun's movement of up and down, aside from its movement around the earth through the zodiac, the sun moves north in the sky and then south from the winter to the summer. Solstice means soul, the sun. Stis, it's the Saturn. It stands still. The sun holds its position, and this is basically the opening of the winter. But what's significant here also is the fact that Venus has just moved into Capricorn. Venus has just moved out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. That happened on the 19th. Let's back this up a couple of days so we can see this actually happening. There's Venus right there. So that whole pile up of planets, that stellium of 4 planets in Capricorn, now Venus leaves Capricorn just before the sun arrives there. But as such, when Venus moves into Aquarius, it forms a square with Uranus. That square with Uranus is exact on the 22nd. And this is attraction, Venus, Uranus, to those things which are out of the box, unusual. This is not being held by the constraints of the rules of law, society. It doesn't mean we act on every feeling, but we kind of get the feeling that we want something exciting. This is in a natal chart, this might be an adrenaline junkie. It's the person who wants the buzz of excitement of something different, something new, something exciting. Even a rebellious and kind of unconventional energy. And so this is on December 22nd. Now we have on December 22nd also, I mentioned Mars forming let's get this ahead one day, Mars forming the sextile with Pluto, intensifying, deepening the energy with the moon right there in the picture. And then by December 24th, Christmas Eve day, we have the sun. Now, remember, when the sun moved into Capricorn, it already was picking up on that trine to Uranus, just like when Jupiter moved into Capricorn on December 2nd, it began picking up on the trine to Uranus. And now the sun is picking up on the same trine. It's exact here. It's actually exact midday on the 24th. And we're now here running at 8 o'clock. Let's put this back at noon. And we can see here now on the 24th that the sun around noon is very, very close to being trine to Uranus. Again, the opening, the awakening, the lightning striking, so that's what's happening. And again, this is, I think, the theme for all of December. As soon as Jupiter moves into Capricorn on December 2nd, we're already getting this. We're already anticipating these resolutions, these movements. And we're also coming in now here to the moon coming closer and closer to the sun. And there is, in fact, at 9:12 p.m. Pacific time, There is the new moon. Now this is at night, so we're not going to be able to see in LA or anywhere in the United States. We won't be able to see the sun. But again, this side of the world where I'm at, and in Singapore, that moon will come over the sun, between the Earth and the sun, and it will be a annular eclipse. Remember, eclipses occur when the new moon or full moon are within range of the nodes of the moon. And here you can see that that this is just 4 degrees away from the south node. Jupiter is conjunct the eclipse. This eclipse is exciting. This eclipse, I mean, we're also still within realms of, or within, the range of being trine to Uranus. This eclipse is a breakthrough. This eclipse is, I think, incredibly powerful, and it's setting the tone for all of next year. Look how close the Saturn-Pluto is now. That's 20 degrees and 3/4, 20 degrees and 43 minutes, and 22 degrees and 1/4. They are a degree and a half apart, Saturn and Pluto, and they're heading toward one another. Nothing's going to stop them now. This eclipse is, I think, basically a turn of events. I think it's a surprise that won't be a surprise, but will be a surprise. I think something happens now that really kind of turns the energy around, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. Good, bad. What's good for someone is bad for someone else. But watch what happens after the eclipse. Within just a couple of hours after the eclipse, let's just move this back an hour at a time. Just a couple of hours after the eclipse, the moon catches up with Jupiter. So this eclipse is really conjunct Jupiter. And then just a couple of days after the eclipse, the sun, right here, the sun at 5 degrees on the 27th, the sun is catching up with Jupiter also, and there the sun passes Jupiter. So this is a very expansive period of time, but it's all in the sign of Capricorn. And look how many planets we have here in Capricorn. We have the sun and the moon, and I mean, they don't even fit. Look, we have the sun, Jupiter, south node, moon, Saturn, and Pluto. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets and the node. And we have Mercury heading there. Mercury will be there in just a couple of days. So things are really serious now, but there's also some good news on the horizon. That's the 28th. Mercury moves into Capricorn now on the 28th. You can see by the 29th it's there. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets. Okay, the moon has moved on into Aquarius, but we still have quite a weight of planets in Capricorn. Mercury moving into Capricorn, we're more cautious about what we're saying. We want to get things right. The thought process has to do with working within the structures. We're out of the realms of just there's no planets left in Sagittarius. We're like done with the blue sky. Now it's, all right, what does this mean? How are we going to work with it? And yet right into that, as Mercury moves into Capricorn, as I mentioned, it begins picking up on the same trine that the sun did, that Jupiter did back at the beginning of the month, the sun did around the solstice, and now Mercury picks up on that trine. And by the 30th, by the end of the year, there it is right there, on the 30th, Mercury forms a trine with Uranus. Mercury is also forming a square with Chiron. Again, the words can cure, words can heal, but words can also create wounds and pain. This is about being careful about what's saying, and I think the healing comes here through forgiveness. This is not an easy period of time, but it sets up the energy for the new year. And at the beginning of the new year, we're still working on this Mercury-Jupiter trine to Uranus. But there's a whole different shift of energy that occurs. And as we move through January, and I'm going to leave it here, we'll pick this up January's forecast. Basically, everything is about Saturn and Pluto. They're now at the end of the year. Let's actually make this go one day further. So this is January 1st, and this is Let's make this 0, 0, 0, whoop, 0, 0, a.m. So this is the first moment of the new year, and Saturn and Pluto are within 1 degree. Saturn catches up with Pluto 3 times a century, and it is the beat of the change of civilization. We are in the throes of this right now. This is the same beat that was around at the beginning of World War I. It's the same beat that was around during the freeing the independence of India. It's the oppositions were during the rise of fascism in the early 1930s. It was also the Vietnamese War and the craziness of the 60s. This was also a Saturn-Pluto. It was also the conjunction in 1982 when we had Israel invading Lebanon and the Soviets were in Afghanistan. And there was also actually the Falkland Island War, which doesn't seem like a big deal to many of us, but it was a real colonial war, England against Argentina. And then, of course, the opposition in September of 2001. So not all events around Saturn-Pluto are bad, even though the string of events that I just mentioned are not easy. But if we follow that same string of events, we also get things like the suffrage movement, the civil rights movement, abolition. Abolition occurred in England at a Saturn-Pluto opposition, and then at the United States 1 cycle later, and then the Civil Rights Amendment in '65 was at a Saturn-Pluto opposition. So the Saturn-Pluto is really what it's all about. And that's what the month of December of 2019 is setting up. But it's setting it up, and once we move into 2020, we will be moving into new territory, but we've been preparing for it for a while. And I think many of us will feel like it's overdue. And I think that we're going to get all kinds of change, huge change in many different directions. Some will be exactly what we wanted, some will not. I don't think that there'll be any one group of people or any one perspective that will say, it's now working, but this is an important period of time, and we need to, as we're moving into it, keep our awareness aimed at what's the best, what's the good that we can do for all of humankind, not just selfishly for ourselves. It's a powerful period of time. So that's it. As you can see, sun's gone down here. It's the end of the year. The beginning of the new year will be upon us before we know it. I hope that you can all, each and every one of you, look back and see a year that perhaps brought you closer to the changes that you want to manifest in your life, the changes that you want all of us to manifest on the planet to make this place a better place for all of us. Whether you celebrate the solstices, or in this case, the solstice coming up in December, whether you celebrate Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Christmas, whatever it is, I hope that you and yours look back at 2019 and see it in a rhythm of greater awareness, greater inclusivity, more kindness, more compassion, and bless you and all of us here on planet Earth. More than ever, think cosmically, but act locally. I'm Rick Levine.